And for more, we have Alexander Claxon, political analyst and founder of Global Political Insight think tank, joining us live from London. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. What can we expect from the G7 meeting, given the Russia-Ukraine war's prominent focus? And additionally, considering new sanctions being announced by the United States and the UK as well, do you think that they'll have a significant impact on Russia, or will Moscow find ways to circumvent them once again, as they have done with previous sanctions?
Hi there. So in relation to your first question, the priority for the G7 countries will be to show unity on the key topics on the agenda. As you mentioned in your report, there's been so many political changes taking place within the G7, and many changes are to be expected as well, with the American elections coming up, French elections coming up, and of course the UK elections as well. So we might see many different leaders in the coming months emerging in the G7. So the focus for them right now is to show that they are at the moment united as to how they approach the major conflicts, such as the war in Ukraine and the conflict in Israel and Palestine. In relation to your second question, it is a headache for Russia, these new sanctions, because essentially they aim to prevent third parties from doing business with Russia. And in fact, over the last 2 years, Russia has managed to circumvent the sanctions regime through working with third parties. Nevertheless, as we have seen over the past 2 years, Russia has been quite good at managing these situations. And I would expect that these new sanctions will not have a significant impact on the war itself, and also on the Russia's economy as well, because the Russia's economy has managed to navigate these sanctions and essentially become a war economy, using the war to actually prop up and grow its economy.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, India has been invited to the G7 summit as an outreach country. Prime Minister Modi is on his way to Italy as we speak. What issues do you think he'll raise at this gathering?
Well, the interesting point here is that India's position on the war in Ukraine doesn't really match the position of the G7, because looking at the strategy of the G7, they essentially want to prolong this conflict for as long as possible by supporting Ukraine militarily and financially, whilst the position of India is diplomacy and negotiations. So I would expect the Indian delegation to, first of all, try and promote this idea that perhaps the war in Ukraine should end through negotiations, rather than this continuous supply of weapons and the financial support to Ukraine. And the second aspect is, of course, bilateral relations. Narendra Modi, as you know, just won his re-election just recently, so he will want to shore up India's cooperation with the G7 countries, and I'm sure he will essentially be carrying out bilateral meetings with all the leaders of the G7 to establish new economic cooperation and enhance the ties that already exist.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that thorough analysis, Alexander Claxon, joining us from London. We're going to be following this story very closely, of course, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.